December 16, 1944, Lanzerath Ridge, Belgium. Snow drifted silently across the low ridge above the narrow road that connected the German border to the heart of Belgium, settling on the shoulders of 18 American soldiers who had spent 3 days preparing defensive positions that would determine whether the largest German offensive since 1940 would achieve its first-day objectives. Staff Sergeant Lyle Book pressed his field telephone handset against his ear, listening to the crackling static that connected his intelligence and reconnaissance platoon to the artillery batteries positioned 5 miles behind the ridge. The men of the 394th Infantry Regiment's INR platoon had been watching the Losheim Gap for weeks, their mission simple in concept but demanding in execution. Observe German activity, report enemy movements, and delay any attack long enough for higher headquarters to respond with reinforcements and artillery support. 18 soldiers armed with M1 Garand rifles, 1 Browning automatic rifle, and an SCR 300 radio represented the only American force between the German border and the road network that enemy armor would need to reach the Meuse River crossings. Through the pre-dawn darkness, shapes multiplied among the snow-covered fir trees, not a patrol or reconnaissance element, but hundreds of German paratroopers from the 3rd Fallschirmjäger Division, moving with the quiet confidence of elite troops who had been told that American resistance would be minimal and quickly overcome. The lead elements represented the vanguard of a much larger force that included armor, artillery, and follow-on infantry divisions tasked with punching through American lines and racing towards strategic objectives. Corporal Billy Queen raised his M1 rifle and fired a white phosphorus flare that transformed the winter forest into a silver landscape where every tree, boulder, and moving figure stood out in stark relief against the snow. The harsh light revealed German infantry advancing in tactical formation, their weapons ready and their movements indicating immediate attack rather than reconnaissance or probing operations. The flare's light lasted only seconds, but it provided enough illumination for the American defenders to identify targets and estimate enemy strength. Muzzle flashes remained controlled as American riflemen fired short, aimed bursts from positions that had been carefully sighted to provide interlocking fields of fire across the approaches to Lanzerath Ridge. The Browning automatic rifle barked 3 times, then shifted to a different firing position before engaging again, creating the impression of multiple automatic weapons while conserving ammunition and avoiding counter-battery fire from German machine guns that were seeking to locate American positions. Book's calm voice transmitted grid coordinates and fire corrections to the Artillery Fire Direction Center, his words professional and precise, despite the chaos developing around his positions. Far behind the timberline, 105mm howitzers coughed in mechanical sequence as American artillery delivered time-fused airburst rounds that exploded above the German formation, creating white spider bursts that scattered the assault troops while demonstrating the coordination between forward observers and supporting fires. The first German rush broke against coordinated American defensive fires, but more paratroopers emerged from the forest to replace those who had fallen to rifle fire and artillery fragments. The attack reformed in the uncertain half-light between flare illumination and natural darkness, testing American defensive procedures and fire discipline while seeking weak points that could be exploited by follow-on forces that waited in the woods for breakthrough opportunities. The ridge had become a test of systems against numbers, American coordination against German tactical experience, with 18 exhausted soldiers using communication networks, pre-registered artillery fires, and carefully planned defensive positions to hold a piece of ground that enemy planners had expected to capture within the first hour of their winter offensive. If 18 men can bend a timetable by flare light, how far can discipline and wire go? The Battle of the Bulge opened on December 16, 1944, with a massive German offensive designed to split Allied forces in the Ardennes while recapturing the port of Antwerp and forcing a negotiated peace that would enable Germany to concentrate its remaining strength against Soviet forces advancing from the east. The surprise attack represented Germany's last major offensive capability on the Western Front, committing reserves that could not be replaced while gambling everything on achieving strategic objectives before Allied numerical and material superiority could overwhelm German defensive capabilities. The Losheim Gap represented a critical avenue of approach for German forces seeking to penetrate American lines and advance toward road networks that would enable rapid movement to strategic objectives. The gap was a natural corridor through the dense Ardennes forest, historically used by armies seeking to avoid the stronger fortifications that protected more obvious routes through Belgium and Luxembourg toward France and the Low Countries. The 99th Infantry Division had been assigned responsibility for defending a sector of the German border that included the Losheim Gap, but the division was inexperienced in combat and had been positioned in what Allied intelligence considered a quiet sector where new units could gain experience without facing major enemy attacks. The 394th Infantry Regiment's Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon, commanded by Staff Sergeant Lyle Book, consisted of 18 soldiers whose mission was surveillance and early warning rather than sustained defensive combat. German planning for the Ardennes offensive emphasized speed and surprise, with paratroop units tasked to seize key terrain and eliminate American outposts that might delay the advance of armored forces following behind the initial assault waves. The 3rd Fallschirmjäger Division represented elite troops with extensive combat experience from multiple theaters, possessing the training and equipment necessary to overcome American resistance through superior individual skills and small unit tactics. The American defensive system at Lanzerath Ridge reflected standard infantry doctrine that emphasized mutual support, communication networks, and coordinated fires rather than static defensive positions that could be overwhelmed by determined attackers. The 18-man platoon had spent weeks preparing positions that maximized their limited firepower while establishing communication links that could bring artillery support within minutes of enemy contact. The M1 Garands rifle that equipped American infantry represented significant advantages in sustained firefights through semi-automatic operation that enabled higher rates of accurate fire compared to the bolt-action rifles that equipped most German infantry units. The weapon's reliability in cold weather conditions and 8-round en-bloc clip system provided tactical advantages that multiplied the effectiveness of individual riflemen when properly employed in coordinated defensive operations. The Browning automatic rifle provided squad-level automatic weapons capability that could deliver suppressive fire while remaining mobile enough to change positions between engagements. The BR's tactical employment emphasized short bursts and frequent position changes that created the impression of multiple automatic weapons while conserving ammunition and avoiding enemy counterfire that might eliminate the weapon and its crew. Communication equipment available to the INR platoon included field telephones that connected defensive positions to higher headquarters and the SCR-300 radio that provided backup communication capabilities when telephone lines were cut by enemy action or equipment failure. The communication network enabled rapid coordination of artillery fires while maintaining contact with supporting units that could provide reinforcement or evacuation if the tactical situation required. The artillery support available to American forces included 150 mm howitzers positioned within range of Lanzerath Ridge, with pre-registered fires on likely enemy approach routes and assembly areas that enabled immediate response to requests for fire support. The artillery system included forward observers, fire direction centers, and ammunition supply networks that could deliver sustained fires in support of defensive operations, while maintaining accuracy that protected friendly forces operating close to target areas. The winter conditions that characterized the Ardennes campaign created additional challenges for both sides, with snow, cold temperatures, and limited visibility affecting weapon performance, soldier endurance, and tactical mobility. American equipment and clothing were generally superior to German equivalents, but the cold weather tested every aspect of military operations while favoring defensive tactics that minimized movement and exposure. German intelligence had underestimated American defensive capabilities while overestimating their own ability to achieve rapid breakthrough against positions that appeared lightly defended. The assumption that American forces would collapse under German assault pressure reflected intelligence failures and strategic miscalculations that would prove costly when experienced German units encountered systematic American resistance. American training had prepared infantry units for defensive operations that emphasized fire discipline, communication procedures, and coordination with supporting arms. But the scale of the German offensive exceeded planning assumptions about enemy capabilities and intentions. The INR platoon's mission had been surveillance rather than sustained combat, requiring tactical adaptation and leadership decisions that exceeded normal operational expectations. The strategic implications of success or failure at Lanzerath Ridge extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation to broader questions about German offensive capabilities and American defensive resilience. The ridge controlled access routes that German forces needed for their advance towards strategic objectives, while American success in delaying enemy forces would provide time for defensive preparations and reinforcement movements that could contain the German breakthrough. December 16, 1944, 05:30 hours, Lanzerath Ridge. The German probing attacks began as small groups of paratroopers tested American defensive positions through limited advances that sought to identify crew-served weapons locations, communication trenches, and gaps in the defensive line that might be exploited by larger assault forces. Staff Sergeant Buck coordinated the initial American response from his command post, using field telephone communications to direct defensive fires while maintaining strict fire discipline that conserved ammunition for decisive engagements. The first German casualties fell to aimed rifle fire from American positions that had been carefully sighted to provide overlapping fields of fire across the most likely enemy approach routes. Private First Class James Fort fired 3 carefully aimed shots from his M1 Garand, then immediately shifted to an alternate firing position that had been prepared for exactly this type of engagement. The movement created uncertainty about American strength while preventing German forces from fixing the location of defensive positions. At 06:15 hours, the probing attacks intensified into coordinated company-level assaults as German paratroopers advanced through the snow-covered forest with the tactical skill that had made them elite troops throughout the European campaign. The attack came from multiple directions simultaneously, testing American defensive coordination while seeking to overwhelm individual positions through concentrated pressure that would create gaps in the defensive line. Corporal Queen triggered another illumination round that bathed the forest in brilliant white light, revealing German infantry moving in tactical bounds while machine gun teams sought firing positions that could suppress American defensive fires. The flare's light enabled American defenders to identify priority targets while providing the illumination necessary for accurate rifle fire against enemies that were attempting to use darkness and concealment to close with defensive positions. The bar, operated by Private William James, provided critical suppressive fire that broke up German assault formations while maintaining the mobility necessary to avoid counter-battery fire from enemy machine guns. James fired controlled bursts of 3 to 5 rounds, then immediately displaced to predetermined alternate positions that had been selected to provide continued fire support, while avoiding predictable patterns that enemy forces could exploit. Book transmitted fire mission requests to the Artillery Fire Direction Center with calm professionalism that reflected months of training in coordination procedures and communication protocols. The grid coordinates and target descriptions he provided enabled artillery crews to deliver precision fires within 100 meters of American positions, while maintaining safety margins that prevented friendly casualties from supporting fires. The 105mm artillery rounds arrived with devastating effect on German assault formations that had concentrated for coordinated attacks against American positions. The time-fused airbursts exploded above the forest canopy, creating fragmentation patterns that covered wide areas while forcing enemy troops to seek cover rather than maintaining assault momentum toward their objectives. At 07:45 hours, German forces attempted a flanking maneuver that sought to bypass American defensive positions through terrain that appeared undefended but had been covered by pre-registered artillery fires and carefully positioned riflemen who could engage targets from concealed positions. The flanking force encountered immediate resistance that demonstrated the thorough defensive preparation that had characterized American positions. The tactical situation required constant adjustment as German forces adapted their assault techniques to American defensive capabilities while seeking vulnerabilities that could be exploited through superior numbers and tactical experience. American defenders responded through coordinated fires, communication between positions, and flexible employment of available weapons that maximized defensive effectiveness while conserving ammunition for sustained combat. American casualties began mounting as German forces achieved local successes that forced defenders to abandon some positions while falling back to alternate lines that had been prepared behind the initial defensive trace. The withdrawal was conducted in accordance with predetermined plans that maintained unit integrity while enabling continued resistance from positions that could be supported by artillery fires and mutual support from adjacent defensive positions. At 10:30 hours, German forces achieved a temporary breakthrough in the American defensive line, forcing Buch to commit his small reserve while calling for immediate artillery support to seal the gap before enemy forces could exploit their advantage. The concentrated fires that responded to his call eliminated the penetrating force while demonstrating the effectiveness of American fire support coordination under combat conditions. The battle continued throughout the morning, with repeated German attacks against American positions that held through superior coordination, communication, and fire discipline, despite being outnumbered by margins exceeding 20-1. Each German assault was met with carefully controlled defensive fires that maximized the effect of available ammunition while maintaining tactical flexibility necessary for sustained resistance. By noon, American ammunition supplies were running low, while several defensive positions had been damaged or destroyed by German mortar and machine gun fires. The tactical situation was becoming untenable, but the defense had already achieved its essential mission by delaying German forces for critical hours that enabled American higher headquarters to identify the main effort and begin defensive preparations. The final German assault came at 15:45 hours with overwhelming force that could not be repelled by the remaining American defenders, despite their tactical skill and determination. The INR platoon was overrun after nearly 12 hours of continuous combat, with survivors taken prisoner by German forces that had learned to respect American defensive capabilities through costly experience that would influence their subsequent operations. The defense of Lanzerath Ridge had cost German forces precious time, casualties they could not afford, and tactical momentum that could not be recovered during the critical first day of their winter offensive. 18 American soldiers had demonstrated that systematic defensive preparation, communication coordination, and individual discipline could achieve results that exceeded every reasonable expectation for such a small force against elite enemy troops. The 12-hour delay imposed by 18 American defenders at Lanzerath Ridge created cascading effects throughout the German offensive timetable that multiplied far beyond the immediate tactical situation to influence the entire first day of the Battle of the Bulge. German staff planning had allocated 2 hours for clearing American outposts and opening routes for armored forces, but the unexpectedly effective resistance forced major revisions to movement schedules and objective timelines that affected operations across multiple sectors. Traffic congestion developed behind German assault forces as follow-on units encountered delays they had not anticipated, creating bottlenecks on narrow roads that were essential for moving armor and artillery toward strategic objectives. The road network in the Ardennes could not accommodate extended delays without creating massive traffic jams that reduced German operational flexibility while providing targets for American artillery and air attacks when weather conditions permitted. German commanders were forced to commit additional forces to eliminate American resistance that was supposed to have been overcome during the initial assault phase, reducing the strength available for exploitation operations and breakthrough missions that required immediate follow-up to achieve strategic objectives. The unexpected requirement for additional combat forces disrupted German operational planning, while demonstrating American defensive capabilities that exceeded intelligence estimates. American higher headquarters received critical intelligence about German intentions and capabilities through radio communications from Lanzerath Ridge during the early hours of the defensive battle. The detailed reports provided by Buch and his men enabled accurate assessment of enemy strength and intentions, while providing time for defensive preparations that would ultimately contain the German offensive. The psychological impact on German forces was significant as elite paratroopers encountered American resistance that demonstrated tactical competence and coordination capabilities that contradicted German assumptions about American military effectiveness. The costly battle for a minor outpost that was supposed to fall without significant resistance challenged German confidence, while raising questions about the viability of subsequent operations against prepared American positions. Medical evacuation systems on both sides were tested by the casualties resulting from the extended battle at Lanzerath Ridge, with American wounded requiring evacuation under combat conditions, while German forces had to provide medical care for casualties that exceeded planning projections for clearing American outposts. The medical requirements further complicated German logistical planning while demonstrating the unexpected costs of operations that were supposed to be routine. American artillery units received their first opportunity to engage German forces with pre-registered fires that demonstrated the effectiveness of coordination between forward observers and fire direction centers. The successful employment of artillery in support of defensive operations provided confidence and tactical lessons that would be applied throughout the Battle of the Bulge, while validating training procedures and communication protocols. The ammunition expenditure required to overcome American resistance at Lanzerath Ridge exceeded German planning estimates, while demonstrating American fire discipline that maximized the effectiveness of available supplies. German forces expended significant quantities of mortar and machine gun ammunition against positions that were defended by fewer than 20 soldiers, creating logistical requirements that had not been anticipated. Intelligence gained through interrogation of captured American soldiers provided German forces with information about American defensive capabilities and tactical procedures. But this intelligence also revealed the systematic nature of American defensive preparations that suggested organized resistance rather than the disorganized retreat that German planners had anticipated. The tactical lessons learned at Lanzerath Ridge influenced American defensive planning throughout the Ardennes campaign as commanders recognized the effectiveness of coordinated defensive fires, communication networks, and systematic preparation that could enable small forces to achieve disproportionate results against larger enemy formations. These lessons were rapidly disseminated throughout American units facing German attacks. German operational security was compromised by the extended battle at Lanzerath Ridge, as radio communications and tactical activities revealed information about unit identifications, capabilities, and intentions that American intelligence services could analyze to understand the scope and objectives of the German offensive. This intelligence proved valuable for American defensive planning and resource allocation. The morale impact on American forces throughout the Ardennes sector was significant as word spread about the successful defense mounted by 18 soldiers against overwhelming German forces. The example of effective resistance provided encouragement for other units facing German attacks, while demonstrating that American defensive capabilities could achieve success against elite enemy forces. Allied air reconnaissance detected the traffic congestion created by delays at Lanzerath Ridge, when weather conditions briefly permitted observation flights, providing intelligence about German movement patterns and logistics bottlenecks that could be exploited through air attacks and artillery fires when opportunities arose during subsequent phases of the battle. The strategic implications of the Lanzerath Ridge defense extended beyond immediate tactical results to broader questions about German offensive capabilities and American defensive resilience that would influence planning and resource allocation throughout the remainder of the Battle of the Bulge. The demonstration that systematic defense could achieve significant results encouraged continued resistance while revealing German vulnerabilities. The defense of Lanzerath Ridge became a tactical case study that demonstrated how small units could achieve strategic effects through systematic defensive preparation, advanced communication systems, and coordinated employment of available firepower in ways that multiplied effectiveness far beyond raw numbers or individual weapon capabilities. The lessons learned influenced American defensive doctrine throughout the remainder of World War II and subsequent conflicts where similar principles proved applicable. The integration of field telephone networks with radio communication systems enabled redundant communication capabilities that ensured continued coordination even when primary systems were damaged by enemy action or equipment failure. This communication redundancy became a standard feature of American defensive planning, while demonstrating technological advantages that exceeded German communication capabilities in small unit operations. The employment of pre-registered artillery fires demonstrated the effectiveness of systematic fire planning that enabled immediate response to enemy attacks without time-consuming mission planning that might delay critical support during rapidly developing tactical situations. The procedures developed for danger-close missions became standard American practice while providing tactical advantages that German forces could not match through their artillery systems. The tactical use of illumination rounds to enhance target identification while conserving ammunition represented innovative thinking that adapted available technology to specific operational requirements. The techniques developed at Lanzerath Ridge influenced American night fighting doctrine, while demonstrating that proper use of illumination could provide significant tactical advantages during defensive operations. The fire discipline demonstrated by American defenders reflected training programs that emphasized ammunition conservation and target selection while maintaining effectiveness against numerically superior enemy forces. These training methods became standard throughout American infantry units, while providing tactical advantages that enabled sustained defensive operations under adverse conditions. The coordination between rifle squads and automatic weapons teams demonstrated systematic approaches to defensive fires that created interlocking fields of fire while maintaining tactical flexibility necessary for extended combat operations. The techniques employed became standard American infantry doctrine while providing tactical advantages that exceeded German small unit capabilities. The integration of intelligence gathering with defensive operations enabled real-time assessment of enemy capabilities and intentions, while providing information that supported broader tactical and operational planning. The procedures developed at Lanzerath Ridge influenced American intelligence doctrine while demonstrating the value of trained observers in forward positions. The maintenance of weapon systems under extreme cold weather conditions demonstrated American equipment superiority and training effectiveness that enabled continued operations despite environmental challenges that degraded German equipment performance. The cold weather techniques developed became standard American practice while providing operational advantages in winter combat. The logistical support systems that enabled sustained defensive operations despite isolation from higher headquarters demonstrated American organizational capabilities and resource allocation that exceeded German equivalents. The logistics procedures validated became standard American practice while providing operational flexibility that multiplied defensive effectiveness. The leadership techniques demonstrated during the defense reflected American training programs that emphasized small unit leadership and decision-making under stress while maintaining coordination with higher headquarters and supporting units. These leadership methods became standard American practice while providing tactical advantages that enabled effective operations under adverse conditions. The medical evacuation procedures employed during the battle demonstrated American capabilities for casualty care under combat conditions while maintaining operational effectiveness despite personnel losses. The medical techniques validated became standard American practice while providing humanitarian advantages that exceeded German capabilities. The technological integration demonstrated at Lanzerath Ridge established principles for combining communication systems, weapons platforms, and support elements into coordinated defensive systems that could achieve effects exceeding the sum of individual components. These integration techniques influenced American military technology development while establishing precedents for modern combined arms operations. The transformation of 18 exhausted American soldiers into an immovable defensive system demonstrated that military effectiveness derived not from numbers or individual heroism alone, but from systematic preparation, disciplined execution, and technological integration that could multiply available capabilities beyond every reasonable expectation. The flare light that illuminated Lanzerath Ridge revealed more than German assault formations. It showed how American institutional capabilities could transform apparent weakness into tactical strength through coordination, communication, and professional competence. The irony was historically profound and strategically decisive in ways that extended far beyond the immediate battlefield to fundamental questions about military effectiveness and the sources of tactical advantage in modern warfare. German forces that had conquered most of Europe through superior individual training and tactical experience discovered that American systematic approaches to defensive operations could neutralize their advantages while creating new vulnerabilities that German doctrine had never anticipated. The human dimension of this transformation revealed truths about leadership, discipline, and institutional training under conditions that tested every aspect of military preparation and individual courage. Soldiers who had been assigned surveillance missions demonstrated defensive capabilities that enabled sustained combat against elite enemy forces while maintaining coordination and fire discipline that exceeded every expectation for such circumstances. The strategic implications extended far beyond the Ardennes to fundamental questions about American military capabilities and the institutional foundations that enabled tactical success against experienced enemies possessing numerical and equipment advantages. The defense of Lanzerath Ridge provided evidence that American training, equipment, and organizational methods could achieve decisive results when properly coordinated and systematically employed. The ultimate testament to American success lay in the 12 hours that 18 soldiers added to the German offensive timetable. Time that enabled defensive preparations, intelligence analysis, and resource allocation that would ultimately determine the outcome of the Battle of the Bulge. Those hours were purchased through discipline, coordination, and systematic employment of available capabilities that transformed a minor outpost into a strategic obstacle. Maps show arrows and unit boundaries, but Lanzerath Ridge showed 18 steady trigger fingers, 1 field telephone wire, and a tactical plan that turned snow and darkness into defensive advantages. Flare light transformed night into information. Discipline converted information into tactical success. Communication networks transformed tactical success into strategic delay that enabled broader defensive preparations. The method that held Lanzerath Ridge established principles that would guide American military operations for generations. That systematic preparation could overcome numerical disadvantages, that communication and coordination multiplied available firepower, and that institutional capabilities could create tactical advantages exceeding individual soldier capabilities. If 18 men with field telephones and predetermined fire plans could delay an entire offensive for half a day, what could army-wide systems accomplish when properly coordinated and systematically employed? The lesson transcended immediate tactical success to demonstrate that disciplined systems could triumph over numerical superiority, that technological integration could multiply human capabilities, and that institutional competence could overcome individual disadvantages through coordination and systematic application of available resources. Subscribe to follow the American systems, communications, logistics, doctrine, and institutional learning that turned weather and darkness into tools for victory while establishing the foundations for modern military effectiveness.